Greetings, unsettled souls. Welcome to the Correct Views. It is Sam Di Gangi with the Media Speaks, giving you the massive Fukushima update. Now, on many months, you've noticed that there have been more Fukushima than world radiation news. Other times, there's been more of the other. And today is definitely one that has to do more with the world radiation than specifically Fukushima. However, I do want to address something that was left on my comment line. There seem to be a number of people who feel that everything is already lost in regards to Fukushima. This person had gone so far as to opine what I had said before, that this could be one of the final proclamations that are foretold in the book of Revelation. Very well could be. However, there are people that have found that living in the southern hemisphere, while not going to be flawless, in the event that the reactor would topple, that it may not be a life extinction event in the event that people are living in the southern hemisphere, because of the way the jet stream works. Who knows if this will work or not, but I have found that if you study history, there were a number of times when people were absolutely certain that the end days were here, only to find out that they weren't. Now, I have been asked repeatedly what you can do to protect yourself from Fukushima dangers, and I have compiled a bit of a list regarding it. I'm going to go over those real quick while people are tuning in, hitting share, and hitting subscribe. Bentonite clay is extremely helpful. It causes a lot of the toxins that are usually not apt to leave the body to do so. Not all of them. You cannot get radioactive substances out of the body once they're in most instances. This does it to somewhat of a smaller degree. Hitting 3,000 milligrams of vitamin C will do a lot to make sure that your body is fighting off some of the damage that is done from radiation, as will echinacea. Trying to avoid mushrooms is a big help because they soak up radioactivity like a sponge. Not eating food from California, Oregon, Alaska, or Hawaii would be a very wise decision if you're not trying to ingest it. And I know that a lot of people don't want to hear this, but if you don't agree, you're welcome to be wrong. I don't mind. I'm just letting you know that I'm right when I tell you that you should not live on the West Coast. You should not, under any circumstances, eat food or live there. And if you do, then you are diminishing your life. So there are a lot of things we can do while we're still here, waiting to see if the end is on us or not. Let me go to this real quick, friends. This is from Zero Hedge. Chernobyl disaster site transformed from monumental sarcophagus to a massive solar plant. Basically, they're turning it into a carcinogenic field trip at the end of the day. But here we go. Some 100 meters from the giant metal sarcophagus that contains the infamous reactor 4 at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant, a new solar project has been built, providing some of salvaging something positive from the disaster zone. As RT notes, the 3,800 photovoltaic panels installed in a 16,000 square meter, that's 3.95 acre area, are expected to produce a total of 1 megawatt of energy for the local grid, enough power for roughly 2,000 homes, according to Science Alert. That's what they're reporting. The shelter object is the aforementioned sarcophagus installed last year to replace the rapidly eroding original concrete shield, of which I might add people lost their lives by the thousands making, has reduced radiation levels to a tenth of their previous amount, affording developers the opportunity to repurpose the nuclear wasteland. Yeah, but if you're there long enough, you're going to take copious amounts of damage, and it's going to have the same effect. So I wouldn't advise working there. The territory obviously cannot be used for agriculture, but it is quite suitable for innovative and scientific purposes, said Ostap Semarak. He's a Ukrainian minister of the environment. He said it to AFP. The panels are fixed to concrete slabs as opposed to being put in the ground, as drilling, digging, or disturbing the soil in the area in any way is strictly forbidden. That's because it'll put all the toxins back into the air. And yet we're supposed to believe that in Fukushima that's not going to happen. We can just keep planting. You can learn by cross-examining these stories, friends. The solar power plant will cover the needs of a medium-sized village, and it will take 24,000 years before people can inhabit this area again due to the radioactivity that is there. Now, even though they're turning it into something positive, if you actually take the time to listen to what they're saying, it is more than mildly alarming. Because you can't disturb the soil at Chernobyl, yet the toxicity in Japan is much worse. And we're about to have the Winter Olympics there to some degree. This is a disaster. And those who are refusing to accept the gravity of it are going to find with great frequency that they wish that they had as illnesses blossom out of control. This is from The Hill, one of the most reliable sources to get any news from. The Pentagon is planning 2 new nuclear weapons. And again, I'm all for America and other nations defending themselves to the utmost of their ability. But this here is toxic even to those who it is trying to protect. Therefore, I'm not in favor of it. The U.S. is planning to develop 2 new nuclear weapons, including a low-yield warhead, according to the Wall Street Journal. The low-yield warhead would be used with the Trident missile, a rocket deployed on U.S. Navy submarines, according to the journal. The Pentagon is also planning to develop new nuclear-armed cruise missile that could also be deployed at sea. The plan would be to reintroduce a system to the U.S. nuclear arsenal that was retired in 2010. And the recommendations for the new weapons are laid out in the Pentagon's Nuclear Posture Review. It says, while the United States has continued to reduce the number and salience of nuclear weapons, others, including Russia and China, have moved in the opposite direction. The United States must be capable of deploying new capabilities if necessary to assure and achieve U.S. objectives if deterrence fails. All right, this is where, and many of you know that I have been a supporter of the president, proudly so. But this is where we have to hope that Donald Trump emulates Ronald Reagan. We know that he has been. We know this beyond the shadow of a doubt. But we need him to do so here. Because one of the things that made Ronald Reagan so great to so many people was the fact that he was able to usher in peace during a time that so many people were sure that we were going to be going to war. I'm 45, so I remember cowering under desks and drills during the 80s. Thankfully, Ronald Reagan took a lot of that fear away, and now you've got people like Xi and Putin undoing the damage that people like Reagan and Gorbachev did. So rather than build new weapons, it would be nice to see Donald Trump moving in the direction of Reagan in that regard. If you agree, make sure you leave a message. Listen to this, friends. Yahoo! Poland to decide later this year whether they want cancer. That's what it says. Well, they're building a nuclear power plant. That's the same thing. Poland will decide later this year whether to build its first nuclear power plant to lower carbon emissions as part of the plan to reduce the dependence on coal, according to Energy Minister Krzysztof Towarzyski on Monday. Poland, which uses polluting coal to generate most of the electricity, plans to lower their share of energy in production from 60% in 2030 to 50% in 2050. There are a couple of glaring errors here. The obvious one is that there is no global warming. None. Zero, zip, zilch. The planet has not warmed in 19 years. There is no global warming. Man-made global warming is a lie. Even if it was true, such as Dr. Helen Collicott believes, she's as green as you can get. The way to combat global warming is not to open nuclear power plants, because you are doing more damage to both the environment and the people than you were if you had not built them at all, if you had just used coal. The other thing is Donald Trump has mentioned repeatedly that there is clean coal. So Poland should be moving towards clean coal instead of moving towards toxic nuclear energy. Perhaps some of what they say about the Polish is true. Our energy security is and will be a long perspective based on coal. Here, a revolution is impossible, but we are ensuring evolutionary change. It remains unclear, however, what could place coal in Poland what could replace coal in Poland in the coming decades. Chernobyl is a supporter of a nuclear power plant, but for the project to take off, a government decision is necessary. I think that in the nearest future, there will be an answer to the challenge, which I consider indispensable, whether or not the construction of a nuclear power plant unit will start. All right, this would be like saying that because someone believes they're starving to death, even though they have a pantry full of foods, therefore they're not. Just like global warming is not happening. If someone believes they're starving to death, and their solution is to drink strychnine so that they don't dehydrate, that is not a solution to dehydration or starving to death. That is pure stupidity that will cause you to die. That is what we are seeing in Poland. If I can be more clear, let me know, and I will see if I can do so. How to prepare for a nuclear blast. This is particularly enjoyable. And it's brought to us, of course, by Kim Jong-un, who we're going to be talking about shortly, the madman who is threatening the world for no apparent reason. How prepared are you to survive a nuclear blast? Well, MSN writes here, Hawaiians were faced with a similar question Saturday morning for more than 30 minutes after an emergency alert notification, of course, botched up. We all know that. It says if you're trying to take Survivor to the next level, capitalists have a solution for everything. And of course, there's bomb shelters you can get. Ideally, you want food, water, cell phone, radio, and then you can hear emergency broadcasts. Although much of that will be destroyed with the EMP pulse. A lot of the electronics will no longer work. But Costco's one-year emergency food kit costs about $1,000, and it has 100 cans, 1 gallon each of 6,200 servings of food: wheat, rice, granola, apples, bananas, peaches, strawberries, blah, 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 blah. You can see the list there. The problem here is that will still be toxic due to the radioactivity that is in the air. So it's not going to help them any, even if they were to spend that money. The cans, the company said, can last up to 25 years. And we don't normally give out sales data, but they said they've been seeing a great demand for their starter kit. Well, a lot of this is because people are too ill-informed to realize that they're not going to be able to survive such a thing. It's like it's a peace of mind. The problem is whether you go to a shelter or whether you go to some other area, there isn't going to be anything that you can do to muster in any kind of survival technique or safety, considering the fact that the nuclear toxicity in the air is going to get into everything. It's going to permeate everything but lead rooms a foot thick. And it's going to be much harder to deal with than you would expect. I am currently doing a show. Call me back in about 2 minutes. I'm live on air. Thank you. It's a huge problem. And I think the most important thing we can do is to realize that nuclear war needs to be avoided. It really isn't something that can be survived. And I think the sooner people realize that, the better it'll be for all of us. 2 more stories to get to here. Listen to this. Some people are taking it quite seriously. Hundreds hurry to cover during Tokyo's first missile drill. As a siren warned of an approaching North Korean missile, hundreds of people in central Tokyo hurried to cover in buildings and underground. But unlike the false alarm in Hawaii 9 days earlier, this was just a drill. The government planned Monday's exercise to raise awareness about taking action should a ballistic device be detected heading to the densely populated Japanese capital. Keep in mind, friends, it is bigger than New York City. So, I mean, it's quite the powerhouse. While Japan has long lived with North Korean threats, unease grew last year after Pyongyang and the regime fired a brass of missiles over the country and into the Pacific Ocean. I hope it doesn't happen, but if it does, I don't want to do nothing, so I'm glad there is a chance to learn, said 34-year-old company employee Akina Asawa, who turned out in midwinter sleet for Tokyo's first drill. It was approved by the budget office. The approval set a record at the budget office, actually, it says. It's quite an extensive campaign. Local governments have already held more than 100 drills. Many have been in rural areas where the dearth of concrete buildings or basements left some residents with little options but to crouch or to try to cover their heads. There would only be about 5 minutes to take action, the national government says. Abe, of course, the president, has made a vow. The small group of protesters held up place cards saying, "Is there any point in doing this? And let's have dialogue, not war." This kind of meaningless training is just fanning feelings of enmity, said Nabuhur Anashui, a 44-year-old elderly care worker, who added that he didn't believe North Korea would actually attack Japan. Other people, of course, have said that there is no point in this happening. Well, let's say here that obviously, and I don't just say this because he's dangerous, Kim Jong-un is a madman. It's very hard to say exactly what a madman is going to do. Hello, listeners. Make sure you hit subscribe, and thank you. It's very hard to say what a madman is going to do. It really is. However, preparing for a blast and making sure that steps are made towards diplomacy are not mutually exclusive. Therefore, I think only a fool would be upset with what Japan had attempted to do there. So I don't think it's such a bad idea. Friends, that brings us to the dumbdee of the day. I'm going to remind you as I go into the dumbdee of the day, friends, that this is listener supported. That means that you can donate at the correct views at hotmail.com through PayPal. And all the money that you give to me, I'll put towards a show that doesn't have a camera and an audio mic that sucks this bad. The only way you'll get better sound is if you help me pay for it. At the correct views at hotmail.com through PayPal. I show receipts, just like I'm going to be doing on the Dunce Cap. All right, guys, I wrote this for the Conservative Daily Post, and it is the dumbdee of the day. Kim Jong-un plans North Korea resort in missile test area. I told you it was the dumbdee of the day. Dunce Cap of the month coming later, as Christelle is terribly behind. When a nation is as strange and as brutal as North Korea is, I wrote, few things that they do shock anyone. When it is remembered how awfully foolish and out of touch their leadership is, this is even truer. However, any nation conflicted enough to parade nuclear weapons threateningly to South Korea only days before joining the nation for a peaceful Olympic march, which they canceled, is capable of planning even the unmovable. Yes, I said it says they're planning it, but they weren't that. Taking a stupidity, well, they were then, but they canceled it. Taking stupidity to new heights, even for them, North Korea has announced a world-level tourist project that places those coming in to enjoy the paradise-like environment right in the fallout area of nuclear bomb testing. As the Sun tells us, this is one place to travel and have a blast, perhaps literally. Not since the U.S. allowed John Wayne and his film crew to make The Conqueror and the bomb site of the Cold War has an idea been so ill-planned, I observe. After all, virtually everyone who worked on the movie died of cancer or radiation-caused symptoms of some kind, including the Duke himself. Perhaps North Korea is trying to thin the numbers of those starving. Maybe they want to make human shields out of vacationers so the U.S. and others cannot attack testing sites without killing innocent families. When they have a whole country to choose from and they pick this one toxic spot, any reasoning seems possible since all reason appears lost. The coastal Gangwon province in North Korean getaway destination that is set to be a reality, the Sun suggested this move is to make the DPRK appear normal when it comes to tourism. Furthermore, it would imply that the sanctions and travel restrictions put on them by the world are not hurting them any, a fact that many all know to be untrue. That still does not answer why North Korean leaders picked one of the most caustic areas to do this, strutting on the world stage. KCNA, the state-run news outlet there, said when the tourist area is built, it will satisfy the demand of domestic and foreign tourists and will be the most ideal place to link various tourist destinations in the Wonsan-Metgongung International Tourist Zone, in a statement. Perhaps their slogan can be, "Come and stay in Gangwon, where you and your wife can snuggle by the warm glow of the dog," as one comedian said about those staying in Belarus after the Russian Chernobyl nuclear disaster. North Korea feels that the poison-filled vacation spot will put them on a world level when it comes to travel as people enjoy the famous sandy beach. Famous? Famous for what? How could it be famous? I love how North Korea word stuff. It hasn't even been opened yet. They're going to call it famous. That's like a brand new band talking about their famous music. When cancer victims start cropping up like travel postcards, they will be famous, but not for the reasons that they had hoped for. Experts have said that tourism is an important part of Kim's plan to boost the North Korean economy. Yet this is as badly thought out as the nation's drafts for bomb testing. All that this is going to do is make the Hermit Kingdom look even more foolish than they do now. Yes, it is possible. Friends, that's your show. Do me a favor, make sure you donate, make sure you tell me how you like it, leave your comments, leave your words of encouragement, and don't forget to donate at thecorrectviews@hotmail.com. Good night, friends. God bless.